Hey, this is Joy. Welcome back to my channel. Today I am bringing you a card using the Painter's Garden Zinnia die set, and I'm going to make a Bud Zinnia. And so what the difference with that is typically for the big flowers you cut 2. I'm doing 3. And then the smaller stigma, I'm cutting 2 of those instead of 1, and I'm not using the smaller die at all. So the thing about the Spellbinders flowers are each one of them have it etched in there saying how many to cut. So I am going out on an edge and making a different type of zinnia. And here I'm writing that up on the screen so that you can see that how many I am doing. I am cutting everything out in a thick white cardstock, and I am going to color those with Copics. So my first flower is going to be with a V 0.3 and a 0.4, and I go with my lighter color on the bottom edge for this flower. And you're going to notice that I flip those over and I color the back side, and that's just because I am going to make these 3D. And there's a possibility that some of the white on the back of the flower will pop through. I don't know that this is necessary, but I like to be thorough. I always strive for perfection, which is going to be funny because I make some pretty crazy mistakes, and I wanted you to see that. Now for the smaller portion of this same lighter purple, I start with the V 0.4 in the center, and then I flick in the 0.3 just to get a little bit of dimension. I find that this makes for a more interesting flower. And then for those little stigma in the center, I'm using the Y 2.3, and I'm doing that for all of them. So that would be a total of 4 each for the pink. And then I'm coming in with the orange, and that's a 2.4 and O 2.4. And I'm doing the other 4 stigma, and that's going to be for the darker flower. Now I didn't leave in the whole process for this next flower, but for this flower, I start with my bottom, the bigger part of the flower, and I color that with a V 2.7, and I do the front and back. And for the smaller portion, I start with the V 2.7 in the center, and then I flick out the 2.6, and that's again giving me the different dimension on the flowers, and I do this for all 3 layers. Now I'm bringing in the greens for the leaves, and I'm using a YG 8.5 and an 8.7, and I am just sloppily putting this down because I am going to draw in lines with my pokey tool, and the leaves really aren't the focal point here. So here I'm using a pokey tool. You could use Susan's garden tool. I just had this handy, and I am drawing a line down the center. So I'm scoring it down the center of each petal of every flower. So all the layers besides the stigma have these lines, and I did that for both the lighter flower and the darkest. And I'm making sure that you're seeing this full time so that you know how long it takes, and that you need to be meticulous about that. And here, this is where I'm bringing in the smaller layer, and again I repeat this 3 times for each size of the flower. I find that this makes it easier to bend the flower later on. And also, when you look at a zinnia in real world, it's got the veins and the folds in it. For the leaf, this leaf has a vein down the center, and then you make like 2 circular motions on the outside of the leaf, which you can see me drawing in, and then it's got 2 sets of like branched off veins on it. And so I'm just drawing that in. If you were to look up a zinnia leaf, you would know that that's there. If you wanted this to pop a little bit more, you could use a colored pencil or a pan pastel to make the lines show up more. I wasn't too worried about it. I thought just giving it texture was enough. Here I'm bringing in the stigma, and I am taking a small fuzzy cut scissors, and I'm cutting each one of those prongs in half. So we're going to have that thing open up really wide, which is what is going to make this a Bud Zinnia versus a regular, like, I think it's called an African zinnia, which is what we normally see when we think of a zinnia. Here I'm taking tweezers, and along that veined area that we drew in with the pokey tool, I am now bending or curving these leaves to be around that. And what that's going to do, it's going to cup that flower, and it's going to make it look more realistic, which makes it three-dimensional. I am taking a medium-sized stylus, and I am just rolling that on the inside of the flower. Now, if you find that your cardstock isn't very workable, you can do a light mist with water. I didn't have to do that. I just went slow and took my time. And I did this for all of the layers of the flowers. On the smaller portion, or the medium size, I made sure that I really pushed that down into the mat so that I would get a nice cup. Now, for the larger portions of the flower, I left it more open. Now, I know Susan uses Kids' Choice glue. I am using hot glue to make my flowers, and that's just because I'm out of the kids' glue. Hot glue works just as well. You just have to be very careful with it because you're working with very small portions of the flower, and you're going to see that here in just a minute. Here with the stigma, I'm using a small stylus, and I'm really pushing that down into the pad so that I get a nice cup. So I am using a hot glue gun, and I am offsetting the petals. And these are the larger portion of the flower. And I'm taking my stylus and I'm pushing it down. And as the glue is drying, I am pulling the petals up so that we get dimension and so that they don't flatten out and stick to one another. Here I am kind of bending the flowers and making it more like a bud. It's the same thing that you would do with a bud, but I'm gripping it lighter, and I'm again just offsetting that. Next, I am making my mistake. What I should have done was go with the smaller pink petals, but I went in with the yellow stigma, and I just went full-fledged on with this. So I made sure I pitched those and I had them down in the center, and I go in and I put all 4 layers in. I am so proud of myself. I feel like I'm making a beautiful flower. And honestly, it probably is, because when you are in nature, you see that at different times of development, or as flowers are losing their petals, they're not as full. So I could have left it, but I wanted this to be perfect. So about now, I'm starting to realize something's not right. But I'm still committed. I'm going to glue these down. I'm making sure to get this a fine point with my stylus. I'm gluing it in, and I am cringing as I'm doing this voiceover. I cringed as soon as I realized what I did, to be honest. But I like to leave all of my mistakes in so that you can see that all of us that do these YouTube videos, we make mistakes. It's normal. And with that, I yanked those stigma out, and I was very lucky they all came in. And then I went in with those smaller petals. I glued those in its place, and I am pinching the leaves up so that we get this nice, big, fluffy flower. And you're seeing that every time I go to put a new layer in, I'm pinching them tighter, and I'm holding it just a little bit longer so that the glue has a little bit time to melt. And this is the same process for both sets of flowers. I think that these flowers are absolutely stunning, and I am so lucky that I got to work with these flowers through Spellbinders. I don't know what I ever did for flowers before this. Now I'm coming back in with those stigma, And since they were already together, I was just able to push them back down in. And those few extra little ones that I had broken off, I just glue right back in because they're there. Why not do it? Why not finish it? And I think that this pink flower might be my favorite. But now we're going to come up with this purple flower, and we are repeating the process 100%. Now, you saw that we had some hairs from the hot glue gun. At the very end, I take my heat tool, and that dissolves the, or it shrinks that glue down and it disappears. Now I am using the embossing folder, 3D embossing folder from the February Club, and I am taking the new Distress Oxide ink, I think it's called Lost Shadow, and on the side that's got the printing, I am rubbing that in onto my folder directly. I had someone recently on social media ask me how I did that. So now I am putting in a piece of heavyweight black cardstock, and I am putting that through my Platinum 6 machine, and here is the reveal. So every place where that inking was, it was pushed down into the paper, and then the black shines through where it pushes up. I am using a sentiment from the January Clear Stamp of the Month Club, and I embossed that onto the Fluted Essentials rectangles, and I am embossing that with white fine detail powder. And then I heat set that with my gun just to get a nice bright image. From there, I apply foam tape to my embossed panel and put it on an A2 side folding card base. And then I pop up the sentiment with foam tape and a little bit of glue in case I need some wiggle room if I don't get it on straight. So I would love it if you would consider liking, subscribing, and leaving a comment. That makes my videos be seen more with the YouTube algorithms. That would mean a lot to me. And if you're new here, please consider subscribing. I love sharing all of my makes, my takes, my mistakes. I think we all have something to share, and we're kind of a fun community here. Now I am taking the leaves and I am just arranging those around, and you're going to see that I pinch the ends and I make those more three-dimensional. You can use the stylus to get more dimension. And I just keep fiddling with this until I am happy with the arrangement. Then I come in with some gems from my stash. They're actually pearls, and I scatter those around just to add some dimension. I absolutely love this card. I love these flowers. I could make these flowers all day long. This is one of the first things that I fell in love with as a card maker. Here are some final views of my card. And until next time, friends, keep crafting. I hope to see you back here. If I don't, have a good one. Be blessed. Bye-bye.